Let's get ready to rumble!
In the interview after capturing the gold medal in Montreal 76, Leonard told Howard Cosell, "I'm finished. I fought my last fight, my journey has ended, my dream is fulfilled." Leonard had already accepted a congressional scholarship, said he would hang up his gloves and enroll as a full-time student at the University of Maryland, where he planned to major in communications. After that, he hoped to go to law school, perhaps at Harvard. He rode back to Maryland with his family, the gold medal hanging from the rearview mirror of the crowded van. Cicero Leonard and Dave Jacobs had driven to Montreal. On the Betway, they were intercepted and then accompanied by a police cruiser, sirens blaring. Joined by local politicians, dignitaries for an impromptu motorcade, the Leonards were whisked away to a civic reception in downtown Washington where, before a crowd of well-wishers, Sugar Ray repeated his intention to retire. "The medal is all I ever wanted. I will never be a professional fighter. I promise you that. It's time to start a new life." 2 days later, the Washington Star, in a front-page story, broke the news that Juanita Wilkinson had filed an application to receive $156 a month in welfare payments, and that Prince George's County had in turn filed a lawsuit on her behalf against Ray, the Olympic hero. The paternity suit came without warning. Leonard had never denied paternity of his son. The somewhat embarrassed officials explained that they had merely been following a pro forma procedure mandated by a recent enacted law intended to winnow out welfare cheats. But the damage to his public image was both immediate and devastating. Several companies who had expressed interest in Ray, they backed away, said Leonard himself. When the news broke out about the paternity suit, all hell broke loose and it killed a lot of deals. Juanita started getting threats. My family blamed her for the suit and jumped on her. As the promised endorsements evaporated before his eyes, Leonard realized that the carefree life of a college student was no longer an option. If he was going to capitalize on his Olympic triumph, he was going to have to go to work. And the obvious choice of occupation would be the one he knew the best. It was the only career where I would not have to start at the bottom, said Leonard. I already had a pretty good resume. I'm just going to intervene. I always heard he turned pro because his parents had piling bills and one of them was sick. Maybe his dad was really sick and his mum was struggling to cope. I heard that's why he turned professional, but this is news to me. This is news to me. Maybe news to you too. However, the institution of marriage in El Chorrillo, Panama, was not a high priority for the desperately poor slum area into which Roberto Duran was born in 1951. His mother, Clara Samaniego, would eventually give birth to 9 children by 4 different men. His father, Margarito Sanchez Duran, had also fathered another of Clara's sons, but the boy, Alcibiades, died of a heart disease as a toddler and was buried in a municipal graveyard in Panama City. Roberto's father was a U.S. soldier of Mexican descent, and once his tour of duty in the Canal Zone was up, he disappeared. He was subsequently stationed in California and in Germany, and upon leaving the service, he married and settled in Arizona. He might never have been heard from again had it not been for his son's success. Duran was a grown man, a world champion, and purportedly wealthy by the time his father deemed it the right time to make contact. Margarito Duran had been a street fighter of some repute, and when he abandoned Roberto, it was later noted the only thing he left his son was his punch. With jet black hair and the dark piercing eyes that Joe Frazier would liken to Charles Manson's, Duran was nicknamed Cholo, which is a term in Panama for one of mixed white and Indian blood. Although Clara did her best to raise a flock of children, Roberto was often left to fend for himself on the streets. From nearly the time he could walk, he hustled for money, shining shoes and selling papers. The later occupation often required that he defend himself against the older newsboys who tried to steal his allotment of papers. Fistfights for street corner turf were not uncommon, and young Cholo more than held his own. Food was scarce. Unable to care for her son, his mother literally gave the boy away on several occasions. When he wasn't eating as a guest of the families of his friends, Duran lived by his wits, often foraging like some feral animal amongst the garbage cans of Chorillo. His formal education ended in the 4th grade. He followed Toti, his brother, to a boxing gym at the age of 8 and had his first amateur bout a year later. He knocked down his opponent 3 times, but possibly because the other boy was the referee's son, he lost the decision. Boxing out of the Cincuentenario Club in Panama, the young Duran attracted the attention of an established local trainer, Nestor Quinones. Although he weighed less than 100 pounds, he enjoyed success, much of it against opponents who were both older and bigger, and many of his best fights took place outside the ring. Duran was 15 when, walking his girlfriend home from a dance, they encountered half a dozen rowdy drunks who attempted to accost the young lady. In a few frenzied moments, Duran knocked out 5 of the assailants. The 6th knifed him with a grazing blow to the back just before the police arrived. Duran, the girl, and his 5 victims all spent the night in jail together. The 6th guy got away. Only later did Duran learn that the man who tried to stab him was the husband of one of his aunts. There's a lot of different accounts about Duran knocking out a horse. His trainer, his famed trainer, Ray Arcel, would later claim to have witnessed the incident, and Arcel, who became his trainer, didn't meet Duran until he was 20, when the first accounts of the horse story are told of a Duran being 15 or 16. So a few discrepancies in some of the accounts of that story. Duran's manager, Carlos Eleta, later told the New York Times and the famed boxing writer of that time, Michael Katz, that the incident had taken place in the Panamanian jungle, winning Duran a bet with some workers. In some versions it was a body shot, in others Duran dropped the beast with a punch behind the ear. He was 16 years of age when he knocked out the favoured Buenaventura Riosco to win the national light flyweight title. And with that victory was an expected berth into the Pan American Games in Canada. Duran's record at that point was 29-3. He had beaten virtually everyone worthwhile as an amateur in Panama. You see, when I done the research online, they said his record was 13-3, but we're hearing now it's 29-3, and I got that 13-3 at least on 3 different sources, but they're saying 29-3. What's the truth? But once again, boxing politics intervened. A soldier from the Panamanian National Guard was picked to go to Winnipeg. Duran was left doing odd jobs, painting houses for $1.50 a day. Then he was propositioned to make $25 to fight, win, lose, or draw. Quinones didn't have to ask twice. Who do I have to kill? Asked Duran.